real quick, and we'll get ourselves started here. I'm Dr. Litton. I know I haven't met everybody here, but I hope you get around the meeting. We're a big group today, and we're not all here. There are some people who might not be able to make it because they're from far distances and whatnot, so Dr. Gregory is going to record this so that they have access to it on Blackboard. But the good news is that you also have access to the video on Blackboard too. So if there's some portion of what we're going over today that you want to review on your own, you're welcome to do that. Going to give you just a little bit of overview here. Like I said, part one of this afternoon's meeting is going to be the orientation that the university asks us to do every time we travel overseas. And we hope you have enough time for some questions and answers and things. I'm sure if we don't get around to a question that you might have, you're always free to email any of us, Gretchen or Beth or me, and we'll be happy to answer your questions for you. We've done this a couple of times. I was talking to Gretchen just a few minutes ago. This will be our 16th tour. We've done 15 in the past. Once we did 2 in 1 year, right? That I didn't even go, and it aged me 15 years. Just knowing they were going up. And on average, I think we've averaged usually 40 some odd participants. So we have brought and safely returned over 700 human beings, okay? Safely return. Don't ruin my track record, okay? Don't get lost over there or run off and marry someone you don't know. So we're going to go over some of the basics about what you can expect today, what you can expect while we're on tour. We're going to talk about things, everything from departure, our experience on the ground, and arrival back. We're going to go over some basic things about safety, about money, about group travel, and all those kinds of things. But what you did at check-in today was really important because we're trying to get to the point where we have all of the paperwork, and there is a lot of it, on everybody. If for some reason today you either didn't have your passport yet, or you didn't have all the information, or maybe you didn't quite have all of the information that we were asking from you in terms of health insurance and whatnot, it is very, very important. Or if you didn't have a chance to go online and check to see that your name matched your passport, it's very, very important that you do that right away, okay? That you get it in just as quickly as you can, because we've got to get all of this compiled, and the university requires us to submit this, and EF requires it, and even our tour director, Chris, needs to get passports in advance because he has to give those to the hotels every time we check in and things like that. So the sooner we get the paperwork stuff all set and squared away and out of the way, the sooner we can start enjoying what we're trying to do here. Okay, so I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about what you can expect when we go overseas. How many of you have already traveled with us before? We got some veterans, there we go. Okay, good. But we are largely a brand new group. How many of you have traveled overseas at all before? Oh, wow, okay, so about a third maybe a third to 50%, that's pretty good. Well, if this is the first time you've ever traveled overseas, or the first time you ever traveled with us, you're in really good hands, because I think after doing this for 14 or 15 years, we kind of know what we're doing. I hope we do. The difference this time is that because these tours have become so popular, we actually are going to have way more than we've had before. And I was sharing with a couple of my colleagues in the hall that the only thing that makes me nervous is I hope we can do this and do this with a great experience, being 2 buses rather than 1, okay? So our typical tour has been pushing 50 odd, and we're going to be taking 90 people on this, okay? So we have to be really, really, really organized, okay? And I'll get to that in just a moment. But first, let's set up the expectation, because many of you have never traveled overseas, some of you have never traveled with us, and many of you may never have traveled with a group before, and that's really important that you know. I'm going to go through the itinerary. This is posted on Blackboard. Dr. Bussel's class, Blackboard for her class, has all of the stuff that we're talking about showing you today, okay? So if you need access to it, ask her or just check into Blackboard. It'll be over in, I think it has trip information is what you created over there. And the first thing you need to know is that we are traveling with a company called EF, Education First, and they're a European-based company, but they have their U.S. headquarters here in Boston in the U.S., and here's a little map. It's kind of hard to see, but we're going to be traveling from the U.S. and we'll be landing in Milan, okay? We'll be landing in Milan. Now, we may connect in Newark or New York or Atlanta. We don't know. Might have a U.S. stop, or we may fly directly from Dallas to, say, Frankfurt, or we may go to Heathrow in London. Don't know. It's going to be very rare for us to go directly from Dallas to Milan. Okay, so there probably will be some sort of connection. As big as our group is, it is very unlikely that we will all be on the same plane, right? If we are all on the same plane, then we'll just, throw a fit and ask for better food. Or we'll give them their plane back. No, don't do that. We could get in real trouble if we threaten anything. But we could sing the Eyes of Texas or something and be a passenger if we want to. So it's really unlikely, given how full planes are these days, that we're all going to be in one group. We have a plan for that. We have group leaders that will go with different groups, and we're coordinating that with the company. One thing you need to know is that this tour company books tickets soon, but doesn't necessarily book specific flight numbers and times until a little bit later. So in other words, it's real important for you to check your name matches your passport, go to your EF account, make sure that it matches identically what's on your passport. What matters is on your passport. If your name is Joe Smith Jr., make sure that if your passport says Junior, your ticket, and they're going to print it based on the EF account that you have, has to say Junior as well, okay? Or if your passport says Joe Smith and EF in your account says Joe Smith Jr., the ticket will be issued the way EF has it in the account. If that doesn't match the passport, that's a big problem. Reason? They got to reissue the ticket. Cost? I don't know, $600-700 maybe? I don't know. It's really, really expensive to do that. So make sure that you do that. Now is the time to do that. They will be booking tickets, but then they will not probably tell us our flights, either the air carrier or the times or the flight numbers until November, probably, okay? Thanksgiving-ish, okay? It has been that late before. With a group this large, it can take longer, okay? Because they don't want to tell us until they get everybody booked what the situation is. I've told them that it's perfectly fine to divvy us up into smaller groups if we need to. Please don't let it exceed maybe 3 groups if we can. But you can expect to get that from us hopefully in November. Our hotels, also with a group this size, our hotels, very difficult to get such a large group booked quickly, particularly in the holiday time, which is still holiday time over there in early January, and so it may take a little while for them to do that as well. We don't normally get all of our hotels in until December, okay? And it is often the case that we don't know all of our hotels until school is out here, at TWU anyway. So that is why it's very important for you, whether you're in the class or not, whether you're at NCTC or TWU or wherever you are, to make sure that you stay in touch with the class Blackboard site. And if you're not already part of the Facebook group that we have for this tour, you want to add AHS TWU. We'll show you how to do that later if you want. If you're not in that Facebook group, that's where we're going to be posting communication, because once school lets out, if we get an important change in our itinerary, maybe the flight number changes, the time changes, the hotel changes, you're going to need to know that. So there's no way to say, well, we'll just call a meeting. No, everybody's already gone home for Christmas and New Year's and things like that, so you've got to check in, okay? So that's very, very important that you know that. So stay connected. You want to be checking into the Blackboard site, join the Facebook group if you haven't already, so that we can make sure that you're in the loop and have communication when we go into sort of what I call holiday blackout time. Okay, and so everybody's getting the emails and all that kind of stuff. It's a big group. It's easy for somebody to get left behind if they're out of the loop, so stay connected. So that's kind of the scenario in terms of the timeline for our travel. We will be departing, I've forgotten what the day is. What's the January the 6th, right, okay, it's Epiphany. We will be leaving out of DFW Airport. Please don't do what one person did, and that is show up at Love Field. Love Field does not go to Italy. It may go to Italy here in Texas, but it doesn't go to Italy. Okay? She called from like Love Field. It's like, where are you guys? We're going to Europe. Where are you? Evidently on your way to Lubbock. And so please go to the right airport. We're leaving out of DFW. Where we connect, don't know. But it is an overnight venture. Okay, if you've never traveled to Europe before, most people when they travel to Europe, they leave usually in the afternoon, sometimes as early as the morning. But you don't get to Europe until the next morning. Does everybody know that? Okay? So that means it's an overnight flight. There are two philosophies. Philosophy one is, I'm staying up, I'm gonna be a Marine, I'm gonna gut this out, I'm gonna go for 48 freaking hours without any sleep, because I can do that, right? And then you have people like me who say, I'm gonna nap, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna walk around a little bit, I'm gonna go back to my seat, I'm gonna have a little snooze, and when I get to the ground, when I get on the ground, then I stay awake. I highly recommend the latter. Okay? What you don't want to do is go to sleep before bedtime, that you want to get on European time as quickly as you can. So I always take cat naps on the plane so I'm not totally exhausted. But once we land in Milan, I need to stay up until after dinner and then crash. Okay? Then what will happen is the next morning you'll get up and you'll be a little bit more adjusted to European time, and it makes it much easier. If you go to sleep on the bus from Milan to Venice for like 3 hours, you're going to be the only one in your room going, hey, who wants to play Uno? Everybody else is going to be going, right? You're going to be that annoying person who's still on Texas time. So don't do that, right? So stay awake, okay? So we're gonna land in Milan. We may have, like I said, 2 or 3 different groups, so we may end up waiting for the other folks to get there, okay? If we connect at a European airport and the connection time is long enough, I'm going to recommend that people change some money there if they can. If we don't have a long enough connection time, if we don't connect at the airport, at a European airport, I'm going to say wait till Milan and we'll see what happens. We may have a group or two who have to wait another hour or two for the rest of us to get to Milan. And if that's the case, we'll grab a coffee and we'll change some money and just take our time and stroll around the airport waiting for the next group. But our first point of business is when we arrive, we're going to get in buses and drive, okay? And where are we going? We're going to Venice the first night. Now, we're actually not legally, technically going to Venice the first night. We're actually going to probably go, I'm guessing, to stay at a place called Jesolo, which is like a beach town, because Venice is an island, okay? And you can take a boat out to the island and tour around, which is what we're going to do on day 2, tour Venice on day 2. But it's an island, and most people don't go and stay the night in Venice, right? If they do, it's like their names are like Bill Gates or whatever. It's really expensive. Dr. Buse will stay. Look at you. She's really just big time, man. She stays in Venice. I stay in Venice. I don't stay in Jesolo. Poor folks like me stay in Jesolo, right? I'm guessing that's where we're going to be, because that's where we always go. Jesolo is a wonderful beach town.
So yeah. We did meet the Russian volleyball team there.
We did. We got into our hotel and said, we got a couple hours to kill. What's going on? The guy goes, well, the Russians are playing the Italians. You want to go see? Yeah, sure. So we went and met the team. It was kind of fun. Jesolo is this kind of a beach town. It's kind of a sort of a family vacation place for Italian families. Just average middle-class Italian families go there for holiday vacation in the summertime. So it's got a lot of stuff. We won't have a lot of stuff open because it's the off-season, but there'll be plenty of space, and the hotels are nice and all that. A couple of things you want to keep in mind. Number one, this is not 5-star hotel, okay? It's also not hostel, okay? I want you to think in terms of, you've probably stayed in lots of hotels before. Think in terms of like Best Western or Ramada. Most of the hotels that we stay in, most of them are kind of either family-run small hotels or they're kind of middle-of-the-road big chains. The rooms are always clean, are always safe, and are always decent in terms of their amenities. They're not going to have like champagne in the wet bar, and you're also not, however, going to have to share a room with 8 guys who are heroin addicts down the hall. Okay? So just think like 2- and 3-star hotels. You know what I'm talking about? Not the Ritz-Carlton, but also not the YMCA. Okay. If when we check in the hotel, first thing we do is we say, okay, here are your keys. Go check in. First thing you do is look around, see is there anything broken? Is the heat working? Is the light working? Is there something wrong? If it is, you come tell us. We'll get you another room. That kind of thing. But the kinds of rooms we stay in are just average, typical, middle of the road sorts of hotels. Nothing terribly fancy. Nothing terribly Spartan. And one of the things that we try to do before we lock down what those hotels are is we kind of do some research. They float the hotels out, frankly. Then we look at them as a team and say, is this okay? Is this going to be okay? And if there's something really wrong with one, we see some really bad reviews, typically ask them to change if they can. They don't happen often. They like us, so they give us pretty good hotels for the most part. But don't get too fancy in terms of your expectations. I mean, there's not going to be like a concierge and waiters all over the place and people tucking you in at night. Day 2, we're going to go over to Venice. We will do a day tour of Venice. We'll have a guide. We'll see St. Mark's Square. We'll have an opportunity. You'll be given admission to the Doge's Palace, and you'll be able to go and take a tour of the Doge's Palace. We're trying to set it up so that if you are interested in going on a gondola ride, that we will make arrangements for that. Now that would cost you a little bit extra. We're trying to negotiate with the gondola union right now to see what we can get that for. Europe has a different mindset. You have to understand. In the United States, we say, I'm bringing 90 people. What kind of discount can you give me, right? In the US, they're like, wow, that's great. In Europe, it's like, oh man, that's a lot of work. Okay, 90, really? That's a lot of work. You got to pay me extra for 90. Americans are not used to this attitude, right? I got to get up early, right? I got to brush my teeth and stuff. It's like it's a pain, It's my day off. So arranging 90 people for something can actually be a bit of a liability. So we're going to drive the hardest bargain we can and find the hungriest gondoliers we can find, and see who wants to go. I think last check we were probably talking like, how much are we guesstimating?
We're negotiating between like 24 and 13.
Yeah, so it's a big range. Yeah. Things like 20 odd euros. Okay, so by the way, you'll be asked, what does gondolas cost? They're all handmade. You have to have a license to be a gondolier. You have to study to do that, and most of these gondolas are passed down from generation to generation. Typical gondola is somewhere in the $75,000 range. Is what it costs. Yeah, they're not cheap. So it's a cool experience if you want to do it. Been there, done there, got the T-shirt. He didn't sing to me, so I'm not really interested in doing that. Sometimes they do sing. They're nice. So that's kind of day 1. Then we'll take at the end of the day, we'll go and leave Venice, and we'll go back to Genoa, where we're going to overnight. Then the next day, we're going to head off to Florence. Okay, so we're going to be on the road to Florence, and when we get to Florence, it looks like what they're going to do is give us sort of a city tour. It's not terribly far. It's a couple hours on the road. They're going to do a city tour there in Florence and get to know where everything is. Florence is a wonderful fashion capital. A couple of things that they're really well known for is their leather works, shoes, and such, right? A lot of designers are from Florence. So there's a lot of things related to more modern stuff, and of course it's the birthplace, the cradle of the Renaissance, and we'll get to know a lot of that. We'll see, in Florence, we'll see the Duomo, okay? We'll see the Uffizi. We're negotiating with EF to try to get all of us into the Uffizi gallery with guides, okay, where all the great paintings are, okay, the Botticellis and the Raphaels and all of those kinds of things. So it is probably the greatest Renaissance art museum in the world. It's probably an understatement. We're also going to see if we can't get them, I'm going to try, to cover the cost of going over to the Accademia, and there's almost nothing, unless you're a Michelangelo fan, that's that big of a deal. They got a lot of unfinished Michelangelo works, but the big thing that's there is that the statue of David is there, okay? So it's not unusual for people to go in, see the statue of David, take that cheesy picture where you're like pinching his butt, and then you leave. So they stand there and they see they don't like you to take pictures, so you can slide. And the rest of the time we're going to have free in Florence, and it's a wonderful place to explore and see some really cool things. Okay, we're not, by the way, we're not traveling to Pisa. If any of you are tempted to sign up for the trip to Pisa, the optional trip to Pisa, we would have to go as a big group, and that would take away time from Florence. So we've opted, as our group, have opted not to do Pisa. Anybody ever been to Pisa before? Right? Did you like it, or is it?
Well, there's just the tower.
That is all there is, and
that's all there, right?
And it does lean. So you go there.
Take that tacky.
That's right. That's right.
And when I was there, it did not have any guardrails around.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I was afraid for my life.
Yeah, you go 3 hours. You go. Yep, it's leaning.
Yeah.
And you take the picture. You get back on the bus, and it's 3 hours back the other way. Trust me, buy the postcard. You want the extra time in Florence. There's so much more to see in Florence. It's fun to shop in Florence. It's fun to eat in Florence. It's fun to kind of mill around. They have a lot of open air markets that are really cool. So there's a lot more to do in Florence. It's much better use of your time. Okay, after we go to and spend the time in Florence, we're going to be heading to Rome, but we're going to make a big middle of the day stop in Assisi, which is, I think, one of the prettiest, along with Siena, one of the prettiest medieval towns in all of Italy. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Of course, it's the birthplace of St. Francis, but you'll be able to see the monastery there, where Giotto's frescoes are, and all this wonderful artwork. You'll be able to see the birthplace of St. Francis, and just some really, really, St. Clare's convent is on the other end of the town. They have a beautiful, beautiful church in the middle of the town where the fountain is, that is so old. Now it's dedicated to Mary, but at the time it was actually a Roman temple. So the architecture of the church dates back well over 2,000 years. So it's a Roman temple converted into a Christian church. It's a really, really cool thing to see. So we'll see the basilica there. And then we'll pack up and go on to Rome. And we'll arrive in Rome, I hope, early enough to be able to enjoy something, maybe an early dinner, and then have some free time in Rome at night. Maybe go around and do a little walking tour of some areas. The next day, which is our last full day in Italy, is Rome. And boy, are we going to pack in a lot. Chances, I don't know how they're going to do this one way or the other, but half the day is spent at the Vatican. We'll go and see the Vatican Museum, St. Peter's Basilica, the Square, the Sistine Chapel. Then we'll have lunch. And then in the afternoon, or this could be vice versa, we'll go and see the Colosseum. We'll walk through the Forum in Rome, and we'll see the ancient Roman ruins there. We'll walk straight down the street that Julius Caesar came into the Forum in triumph after having conquered the Gauls. We will see all kinds of really cool stuff. If time permits, there are some really neat places that I can point you to that aren't too far away. The Mamertine prison, for example, where Paul was imprisoned before being executed. A couple of other really cool places around town to be able to see. It's a really, really neat place. And then we'll have that final evening there of free time. Now, what do we do with free time? Well, free time is for free, right? But you need a budget for that a little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. A couple of things that we like to do, and that is we get the group leaders together and we kind of sketch out some different activities. And if you want to go on your own and do something with some buddies, you go right ahead. But it's typical that we'll get up and say that Dr. Gregory is going to go and do X tomorrow morning. Gretchen's going to do Y. That's going to do Z. Dr. Busel's going to do A. I'm going to do B. You're welcome to join, or you're welcome to do it on your own, right? So if you kind of like, well, I don't know what I want to do. What are you guys going to do? Then we'll have some things that we're going to do and go and see, either in the evenings or whatever free time we have. So it's one of those things where you can join a group, a small group, or you can go and do your own thing. So we don't like to kind of hamper that too much on that. We're not doing the extension to Pompeii. We don't have time. We have to get back to this thing called school. But this is posted right up there on Dr. Busel's Blackboard site as well. Now, what I'm going to